the air with breaking news in the highest profile January 6th case yet. The verdict is in for 5 Oath Keepers facing the most serious charge we've seen so far, seditious conspiracy. So what has the jury decided? After 3 days of deliberations, we're going to tell you live the second we know. We're also live with that dangerous storm threat all across the South, with tornadoes potentially rolling in any minute. And it could get deadly because they're going to hit right after the sun sets. We're live in one of the cities which could see extreme weather tonight. Plus, breaking in the last hour. And a spoiler alert, if you care about soccer, earmuffs. The U.S. men's soccer team moving on after that 1-0 win over Iran in a politically charged matchup with plenty of action off the field on this one, too. We're going to take you to the stadium. And a story we're seeing first right here on NBC News. The Justice Department suing Mississippi's biggest city for failing to make sure it has safe water. Why this is happening now, months after Jackson's water crisis started. Plus, in tonight's original, a Florida woman says the cheese misleads. We'll tell you why she says one of the biggest food makers is using false ads to get people to buy their mac and cheese, what the company's saying about it, and how it plays into this bigger question on food marketing writ large. And the story of a family made whole again after nearly half a century apart. The almost unbelievable reunion, helped along by a DNA testing company, a little bit later on in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and right now you've got the sun just starting to set in the Mississippi Delta, setting up for a dangerous and potentially deadly night. Our climate team here at NBC News says it's not a matter of if tornadoes are coming, because they say they are coming. It's a matter of where and hoping they don't hit where people live. So time for me to do my best Al Roker impression and show you who's in the path of this danger, right? Right now, 17 million people at risk. The darker the color gets here, the more likely that severe weather could hit. You've got several strong tornadoes, which seem certainly in the realm of possibility, with hail like the size of your fist expected to pelt down, 75-mile-an-hour winds. This stuff is not pleasant. It is severe. And the worst of it is in the heart of Mississippi, right? That state, plus parts of Louisiana and Arkansas, now under what's called a particularly dangerous situation. This is a weather term for it's going to be really bad until 8 p.m. Eastern tonight. Downpour, hail, a lot of tornadoes potentially. It's a part of the country that typically gets hit hard in November by tornadoes. You see the monthly average there. And remember, tornadoes at night are more deadly, 2.5 times more deadly than similar storms when it's daytime. That's because people are sleeping. Maybe they don't see the alerts. They're not able to get out to safety. It's not just tornadoes either. You've got flood watches all along the Gulf Coast through tomorrow morning. And then this whole thing shifts up the East Coast with heavy rain from Florida to New York, making for a pretty wet tree lighting at Rock Center tomorrow night. Blaine Alexander is live for us in Memphis. And Blaine, you are kind of in the edge of the bullseye, right where we think the tornadoes could hit. But these storms are so unpredictable, they can shift at any time. Talk me through what you're seeing and how people are prepping.
Well, absolutely, Hallie. You know, the biggest warning that's coming from officials here in Memphis is they are telling people to expect power outages and telling them to be ready. We already know that the power team here in Memphis is preparing to work 16-hour shifts. They said that they're ready to work around the clock if necessary in order to restore power. Now, you talked about tornado threats. Of course, that is the most pressing threat, and we'll get back to that in a second. But when you talk about storms like these, the threats really are multifaceted. So you talked about why it's so dangerous to see tornadoes at night. That often leads to shorter warning times. That means that the alarms are coming closer and closer to when the tornadoes are actually going to hit that area. So certainly that can mean much more danger for people who are often already sleeping or in their beds. So officials are warning people, yes, know where to go for safety, know where the lowest level of the house is, or if it makes sense, get to a shelter ahead of time and stay there. As for power outages, we're not just looking at those tornadoes, we're looking at strong gusts of wind, knocking over trees, knocking over power lines, and that's going to lead to a lot of people being in the dark in areas that may not get a direct hit from tornadoes. So they're telling people, charge up your phones, have flashlights, have the batteries already loaded. And then, of course, if that's not enough, Hallie, the other risk is flash flooding. We're talking about heavy, sustained rain falling in a lot of these areas. In fact, parts of southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, Louisiana are already in flood warnings. But officials are warning that any of these areas could potentially see flash flooding if the rain falls fast enough, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander getting ready for it, of course, in Memphis, Tennessee there. Blaine, thank you. So in the last few minutes, turning to news in the sort of domestic and international worlds, the U.S. dream of winning the World Cup, however small those chances are, still exists. You're telling me there's a chance, right? Because the men's team won what could be the most politically charged match in years, with the U.S. team advancing out of the group stage in Qatar with a 1-0 win over Iran. The game-winning goal, scored late in the first half by superstar Christian Pulisic. You might notice he's not looking too thrilled in these pics. He actually got hurt scoring this goal. He couldn't play in the second half. The celebrations coast to coast right after the U.S. went up by 1. Look at the crowds. Reno, Kansas City. You can see the moment when that goal happened. That's what it looked like in the foreground. But here's the backdrop, right? Major tensions with reports of threats to the Iranian players after they appeared not to sing the national anthem in their first game. You can see them clearly singing today. And after a wave of anti-regime protests in Iran, the tensions coming into sharper focus after the U.S. Soccer Federation tweeted out a picture of Iran's flag that did not include the emblem of the Islamic Republic. Megan Fitzgerald is in Doha, Qatar. And Megan, there's a lot to this, right? There's the action on the field, but let's start with what happened off the field, right? The geopolitical backdrop that is undeniable here. I was struck by the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, saying today, basically, the athletes should just do their thing. Like, let the soccer players play soccer. But this is so much more than simply just a soccer game at this moment in time, given everything we're seeing in Iran and the U.S. looking to show support for those demonstrators going up against the Iranian regime.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, in an ideal world, it's just come to the World Cup and play soccer. But that's not what we've seen here. Politics, human rights, protesting, all of that infused with sports. We know that fans are watching much more than just games. As we've been talking about, just a couple of days ago, we saw the Iranian players standing in solidarity, seemingly with the women of their country. A bold move. We talked to scholars who say there could be severe consequences either for the team for that or for their family for that. And then, of course, we saw protests in the stands. We saw pro-Iranian government protesters clashing with people who are anti-Iranian government. And then the other day, the U.S. Soccer Federation trying to stand in solidarity with the women of Iran, making Iran upset. Them asking FIFA to suspend Team USA for 10 games, kick them out of the World Cup. Like you said, there's so much to this. And then you've got the players that are caught in the crosshairs of it all and then told to just go on the field and play your best game. I mean, there's so many distractions, but that's what we saw today. As much as we could see, these players left it all out there on the field. Of course, the U.S. victorious. We talked to some fans. They're stoked. They're excited. This is what they flew all this way for. I want you to listen to a little bit of what they had to say.
I don't came to 3 games, and I love it. We advanced. We're playing well. Let's go.
We feel so proud of our country, and we're so happy to be here in Qatar with these amazing people.
We've waited 8 years for this, to be back in a World Cup.
How did it feel for you?
Great.
Yeah, big win tonight for Team USA. They are now advancing to the knockout round where they are going to take on the Netherlands, Hallie, on Saturday. All eyes on that game.
You know everybody's going to be looking forward. Nice that Saturday is not a work day for a lot of people, too. I'm sure there will be tons of people, myself included, watching. Megan Fitzgerald, thank you very much. So let's talk about what else has gone down in just the last few hours here in Washington, with the White House press secretary saying President Biden is confident that there will not be a rail strike, that Congress has the votes to pass a bill that would force these rail workers and companies to get to terms on a deal here. But the goal, of course, is avoiding a strike all across the country right as the holiday shopping and shipping season is about to hit. This is something that the president avoided talking about on his trip to Michigan to hit on the economy, although he did say a whole bunch of times that unions are the backbone of this country. And listen, gang, this is the tightrope that the president is looking to walk, right? He's got to prevent what could be an economic disaster, but there's only so much he can do. Congress can do more, right? You've got House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who says the House is going to vote on a deal tomorrow. Our NBC News sources say it'll probably pass, but then it's got to get through the Senate. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is not committing when asked if he has the votes.
We understand the time deadlines, and we'll be working together to figure out the best way to get it done quickly.
Do you have the support of all Democrats?
As I said, Leader McConnell and I are going to sit down. We agreed to at the meeting today and figure out the best way to get it done quickly.
That is Washington speak for nope, we do not have the votes yet. A reminder on the deal itself, it gives workers a record-breaking pay bump of 24%, but it doesn't include some of the quality of life changes that workers wanted, like paid sick days, etc. 4 of the 12 unions have said no to this deal. We're going to keep a very close eye on what goes down with this in the coming days, singular, because this can't stretch weeks. If it does, you've got real strike potential. We want to get now to some breaking news that is just into us. We mentioned it at the very top of the show. A jury now getting to a verdict in the most high-profile trial yet related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Literally 20 seconds ago, I was told we know what the verdict is. I don't myself know. We know that the charges were seditious conspiracy for these 5 members of the Oath Keepers, a far-right militia. Let me bring in immediately here Ken Delaney. And Ken, guilty or not guilty? What is the jury deciding?
Well, Hallie, we only have a partial verdict right now, but we've learned that Stewart Rhodes, the head of the Oath Keepers, has been found guilty of seditious conspiracy as the verdict is continuing to come in. And that's really the most important question.
Yeah. And let's explain why that is so significant here. So Stewart Rhodes, the sort of self-styled leader of the Oath Keepers, this far-right militia group, seditious conspiracy is the most serious charge, Ken, that we have seen against any of the, insurrectionists who were at the Capitol that day. This is again, we don't know, and I think you're right to be cautious here. We don't know what the other 4 verdicts are or what the other verdicts are for the other 4 individuals. But even this alone, Ken, has to represent, I would imagine, a huge win for the government here, for the DOJ.
Oh, enormous, Hallie. The stakes were really high here. The Justice Department had not successfully convicted anyone of the charge of seditious conspiracy in 17 years. This was a difficult charge to prove, and some thought it was a mistake to bring it, but the Justice Department has won this conviction in the case of Stewart Rhodes. There are other charges against each of the defendants, and we'll let you know as they come in. But this is the big kahuna, because this charge alone carries a maximum of 20-year prison sentence. And what it says is that Rhodes is convicted of trying to impede the lawful authority of the government by force. And this was about essentially his coordinating this effort to bring guns into the Washington, D.C. area. Some of them were stored in Virginia in hotel rooms in what Rhodes called the Quick Reaction Force, and dispatch members of this Oath Keeper militia to the Capitol. Now, Rhodes said he took the stand during the trial and he testified that there was no plan to enter the Capitol and that he thought it was a bad idea that they entered the Capitol. But then there was other evidence contradicting that, including a tape recording of Rhodes saying that the only mistake of these Oath Keeper militia members that did enter the Capitol was that they didn't bring rifles. There was also evidence that some of them were hunting for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi during their stint through the Capitol. So what differentiated this group from some of the other people who have been convicted of criminal charges is that they entered the Capitol in military formation. They conducted planning. They had weapons not with them at the Capitol, but on hand. And Rhodes, it was very clear, Rhodes wanted Donald Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act so the Oath Keepers could then become what they thought would be a lawful militia to help Trump stay in power. That was the heart of the government's case, and they have won at least the most important conviction, Hallie.
Let me explain to people, just in the interest of pulling back the curtain here, as we so often do, Ken, and Julia Ainsley, one of our colleagues here who also covers DOJ, is with us here on set. Right now, we've got a team in the courtroom. Literally, these verdicts are being read out live as we are on the air here, right, at a courtroom that's not too far from where we're sitting here in Washington. As you are so that is why we know the Stewart Rhodes verdict. As you were talking, Ken, and I'm sure you're looking at your phone and your email here, we just found out that 3 other defendants here, Kenneth Harrelson, Jessica Watkins, Thomas Caldwell, again, 3 members of the Oath Keepers, you see 3 of them on screen, have been found not guilty of seditious conspiracy. Okay, again, the most serious charge that they had been facing. Help us understand why that is.
And Hallie, another email telling us that another defendant, Kelly Meggs, was found guilty of seditious conspiracy.
Okay, so why would Meggs and Rhodes be found guilty? Yeah, explain that. Why are the 2 of them now found? Why did a jury find the 2 of them guilty on this really serious charge here, but not the other 3?
It was a matter of whether the prosecution met its burden in terms of showing that all of these people conspired and that their motive was to overthrow the government or impede the lawful authority of the government. Now, Jessica Watkins, for example, took the stand and portrayed herself as somebody who made a mistake and had a lot of regret for what she did. That was very different from Stewart Rhodes' position on the stand, and she may have helped herself in front of that jury. At the end of the day, there were differing levels of evidence for each of these defendants, and so that may explain the mixed verdict, Hallie.
Right. Watkins acknowledged some of the charges against her, but denied plans to storm the building. Julia, let me let you jump into the conversation here on, again, the news that is just unfolding, just developing literally as we speak.
Right. I mean, so there were a lot of unusual things about this case. One is that the Justice Department brought these very serious charges. And if I could just define this for your viewers so they understand how serious seditious conspiracy is, because like Ken said, it's not something that comes up very often.
Right. It's unusual.
It is to conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the United States government. And the last time the Justice Department successfully convicted anyone of this was in 1995 from Islamic terrorists who were trying to target certain New York City landmarks. This has been a long time since anyone was found guilty on charges like this. And in this case, it seemed that Stewart Rhodes took an unprecedented approach by taking the stand himself. That's not something you usually see from a defendant. He tried to defend himself, saying that it was not the mission of his group to go inside the Capitol and that he was disappointed to see so. But the evidence was so strongly to the opposite,
right.
Hallie. We heard about
the receipts,
inside a hotel room just across the river, the text messages. And then there's more to this. I mean, we have this charge, or this guilty verdict today, but we've also reported here at NBC News that the January 6th committee is interested and now has in their possession all communications between the Secret Service and Stewart Rhodes leading up to and through January 6th. So let's hear more about what people knew about Stewart Rhodes and these plans from the Oath Keepers up through January 6th and why there wasn't more done to stop them.
I just want to help people, because I think sometimes it can be like a lot, right? Like we talk about January 6th. I think everybody understands and knows what that is. But then it's like, okay, there's this defendant or that defendant or this case or that case. We're just make really clear, this was the case, right? And Ken, if I'm overstating it, jump in. But like this was the case to watch because there have been hundreds of people who have been charged and tried and either plea deals, trials we've covered, et cetera. This was super significant because of how significant this seditious conspiracy charge is, as Julia so capably laid out, Ken. And I think it's important for folks to sort of hear that and understand that's why we're spending some time talking about this, because this was like the real litmus test, I think, for prosecutors who are going after some of these insurrectionists.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Hallie. This one, and then there will be another trial of 5 other Oath Keepers charged in the same conspiracy, and then there'll be another trial of 5 members of the Proud Boys, a separate but related far-right militia. But yeah, these 3 trials, and this one is big because Stewart Rhodes, remember, a Yale Law School graduate, a former Army paratrooper, is in many ways considered a figurehead of this whole episode, this whole January 6th insurrection, riot, whatever you want to call it. There's evidence emerged in this trial that Rhodes tried to contact then-President Donald Trump on several occasions. He really believed that he and his cohorts were going to keep Trump in power. Now, there was a lot of debate about whether there was evidence that there was an actual plot to storm the Capitol, and the picture is not 100% clear on that. There was some talk about the Capitol. But one thing was clear is that Rhodes and his cohorts came to Washington with the intention of using violence. They thought either they were going to fight Antifa in the streets or they were going to help Trump stay in power. There was a lot of testimony that Rhodes told his people that this was a moment. They compared it to 1776 when they had to help Donald Trump stay in power because they believed the election was fraudulent and that their country essentially was being taken from them, and now Rhodes has been convicted of seditious conspiracy.
I want to just show people, this is like the grid. I mean, this is how complicated it kind of gets, right? Who it is, what the charges are, but the key one was count 1, which was the seditious conspiracy charge. There were also obviously other charges, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Interestingly, Rhodes was found not guilty of that one, guilty and not guilty of some others too. There's a mix here, but obviously the key count was that seditious conspiracy. Can they appeal, both he and Meggs?
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, on procedural grounds, on the questions of whether they got a fair trial. A jury verdict is a very powerful thing. No doubt there will be appeals. But this is a huge moment for the Justice Department. Had they lost this case, it would have been an enormous setback. Now, obviously, they didn't win on every count here, but getting these seditious conspiracy convictions. Rhodes, you know, Rhodes was acquitted on that charge of obstructing an official proceeding. He never actually entered the Capitol. That may have been a part of that, the reason he was acquitted on that charge. That was the more commonly used charge against Capitol rioters. But seditious conspiracy was the big one, and the Justice Department got 2 convictions on that, Hallie.
Julia, I know you wanted to jump in on this, too.
That's right. I mean, you talk about this being the case because now the Justice Department has cleared the bar to show that January 6th was not just a protest gone wrong, that there was actually a conspiracy here to overthrow the U.S. government. And guess what? Who that sets up really nicely, and that is our new special counsel who's looking at President Trump's role in January 6th. So we saw a lot of the defense here say that people like Stewart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers were really just taking their cues from President Trump. So if the people who took their cues from the former president are now found guilty of seditious conspiracy, what position does that put Jack Smith as he looks into President Trump's role in January 6th? I think it's important to keep that context in mind.
That's a great point. This is all connected. And there's also the political context and backdrop, Ken, to this, too, because it seems unlikely that even this guilty verdict now, these two guilty verdicts on seditious conspiracy, perhaps, Ken, not likely to move the needle among those on the far right who have sought to downplay what happened on the day of the attack and have sought to frame some of the people who are convicted and sentenced now as being almost victims or martyrs for the cause.
Yeah, it's hard to know what moves the needle among a certain segment of the population. But one thing this opens the door to is sometimes people who are convicted and are facing lengthy prison sentences, sometimes they agree to cooperate. And they begin to provide the Justice Department information, the FBI information that they didn't have, connecting other people to the conspiracy. So I don't think we should rule that out. But again, just an enormous, important victory for the prosecutors who've been spending months investigating this case, Hallie.
Ken, I know you got to run and get ready for Nightly News, where we'll be having more coverage of this later on, including here on NBC News Now. Julia Ainsley, thank you so much for scrambling up for us here as we've been covering this significant piece of developing news out of Washington. As Julia and Ken both mentioned, there is a connection, obviously, to what happened on January 6th and to the actions of somebody who is now a presidential candidate, former President Donald Trump. And we are seeing more news as it relates to him today, too. Maybe news he might not want to hear, because Republican leaders of both the House and the Senate seem kind of split today about who's really to blame for that dinner between the former president, a noted white supremacist, and Ye, formerly Kanye West, who has made these anti-Semitic comments. You've got Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell saying there is no room for anti-Semitism or white supremacy in the GOP. He took aim at Mr. Trump, although he didn't specifically call him out by name. Listen.
Anyone meeting with people advocating that point of view, in my judgment, are highly unlikely to ever be elected president of the United States.
Kevin McCarthy, on the other hand, denouncing Nick Fuentes, that white supremacist who was at the dinner, but not seeming super ready to get off the Trump train just yet.
I think President Trump came out 4 times and condemned him and didn't know who he was.
Those comments coming just a day after other top Senate Republicans criticized the former president, some calling the dinner ridiculous. One senator reportedly calling Fuentes an A clown. I don't think I can say the A word on TV, but you can surmise it. Mr. Trump says he didn't know anything about Fuentes, as you heard Kevin McCarthy say, saying he showed up unexpectedly with Ye. Ali Vitale knows this. She's been covering this. She has been tasked as part of the team to be asking Republicans about something Donald Trump did yet again. Have we not been saying this for the last 6 years? Like, this is the movie that keeps playing. And what you have is a split that is not shocking, Ali. Mitch McConnell, not besties with Donald Trump, like to say the least. You know what I mean? Like, they are so far from it. So it's not surprising that he would kind of call out the former president, as he did today, although not by name. Then you have McCarthy, who would probably need Donald Trump's support if he wants to be speaker. It is a microcosm of this bigger discussion inside the Republican Party of how much to hug Donald Trump and how much to push him away.
If Kevin McCarthy wants to be speaker, he definitely wants to be speaker, and he cannot afford a battle with Donald Trump right now, because he's got a battle for the 218 votes that he needs to actually become speaker, and he needs to do that over the course of the next few weeks. In fact, McCarthy is huddling in his office right now with some key Republicans, just kind of talking about what people are telling us are family issues, quote unquote. So they're trying to hash things out in real time right now. McCarthy has his own problems inside the Republican conference. So Not surprising that he's still sticking close to Trump, defending Trump, saying that Trump condemned Fuentes, which, by the way, no, he didn't. He said he didn't know him. And there is a stark difference with McConnell, but there's always a stark difference with Mitch McConnell, because you're right. There's no love lost between McConnell and Trump. They've been trading barbs for years. And so for McConnell, he's in no position. He's not, it's not politically disadvantageous or surprising to hear him condemn the former president. But I do think it's important. You say we've been here before. Like, we've literally done this news cycle of Trump and white supremacists before. Even in 2015, think about this. When you and I first started covering candidate Donald Trump, there was the entire week-long back and forth over whether or not he would disavow David Duke. Then we saw it again with Charlottesville, with good people on both sides. Then we saw it again during the 2020 election, where he said stand back and stand by to right-wing groups. Then we see it again now. This is a revolving churn with Donald Trump, this proximity that he seems to have to white supremacists and the far right here.
So what's going to be different this time with the Republican Party, Hallie? Anything, or is it too soon to say? I'm not asking you to speculate on a crystal ball. I'm asking based on the reporting that you've done, covering Capitol Hill, covering many of these top Republicans.
Yeah, because, you know, we put the crystal ball away. I think the thing that's different right now is that politically, Trump has never been weaker, and this is coming at a point where people are seeing that maybe the political reach that they thought he had, the command over a powerful chunk of the conservative base, that maybe that doesn't extend as far as people thought that it did, or maybe it's waned since he has left office, and certainly maybe since January 6th itself. So all of these are sort of open questions, but we've seen Republicans in the past have opportunities to take the off-ramp from Trumpism, and they don't take it. Or maybe they take it and then get right back on the highway. We saw that after January 6th, too. And so I think the people who have come out and disavowed him in the strongest terms, Mitch McConnell, certainly, but then also look at people like former Governor Chris Christie, a former Trump ally, Governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson. We've seen Mike Pence saying that Trump should apologize, which you and I have covered him for half a decade. He's never apologized for anything. Like, the people who are condemning him the most strongly are the people likeliest to challenge him. Everyone else is offering condemnations from a moral perspective, and it's unclear that they're ready for a political break yet.
There is a connective tissue, Hallie, to the Trump headlines that we have talked about, not just in this discussion over the last 3 minutes in this segment, but in this show, and sort of more broadly in this moment. You've got what we've just discussed here, this dinner now with the white supremacist who, as you correctly note, Mr. Trump did not denounce wholeheartedly. He instead said he didn't know who Nick Fuentes was. You've got, you know, what we've seen in this nascent political campaign 2.0 that he's running to try to get back into the White House, where we haven't seen him on the road. The New York Times is reporting he is unlikely to travel to Georgia in support of Herschel Walker. Maybe he'll do a phone rally or something of that nature, because both campaigns have sort of deemed it better that way. And you have what we just talked about with Ken and Julia, which is a special counsel, Jack Smith, looking into specifically what happened on January 6th. Donald Trump wrapped up in that, as we've just seen now, these guilty verdicts for two members of this far-right militia group, Hallie. There is a thread connecting this all.
The thread, I think, is it all lands at 2024, and no matter who you are, Trump supporter, someone who doesn't like him, all of those things that you just listed, Hallie, are baggage. And that's the thing that I hear consistently from voters who may like Trump, may want to see him run again, may want to see him be president again, but they have concerns because of the amount of baggage he has, and it's why you see some in the party looking for other options right now.
Hallie Vitale live for us on the Hill, covering all of it. Hallie, thank you. As we talk about the Justice Department, there are new moves today by the DOJ on a totally different topic, looking to try to fix the water crisis that is still somehow happening in Jackson, Mississippi. Today, you have the DOJ suing the city for violating the Safe Drinking Water Act. NBC News was first to report this afternoon that the DOJ also filed a proposal in federal court to bring in a third party to basically try and get the city's water system stabilized. We've talked about Jackson a lot on this show. There have been a lot of headlines, rightfully so, about what's happening there, because the predominantly black capital city has been dealing with these on-again, off-again boil water advisories, because the infrastructure in Jackson isn't great. It got worse in August when the city's biggest water treatment plant failed after heavy rain. People need to be able to drink clean water. This is a key environmental justice and civil rights issue. This is something that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, the EPA administrator, have said they're working to prioritize recently. We're going to keep an eye on that lawsuit, see how that goes, and keep you posted, obviously, in the months to come. Coming up, more here on this show. A busy Tuesday with the UN hoping to put the Great Barrier Reef on its list of endangered World Heritage Sites. But Australia says, no thank you. Why? We'll talk about it in our 5 things. We are getting a look today at a moment a half-century in the making. A woman kidnapped when she was a toddler, now reunited 51 years later with the family she was stolen from. Look at this. Can you even imagine? This is the moment when Melissa Highsmith meets her mother. Melissa's in the black, her mom is in the red. And the first time these two are together in 51 years. Ever since the moment that Melissa was kidnapped in Fort Worth, Texas, back in 1971. She was almost 2 years old, and her mom had hired a babysitter that she hadn't met before in person. While her mom was at work, the babysitter allegedly took Melissa, never came back. But you know what? Her parents never stopped looking for her. They did a bunch of DNA tests. Finally, they decided to do, okay, they say 23andMe, you know, the DNA testing company. To their shock, they matched with Melissa's child and then found Melissa through that match. Melissa now goes by Melanie. She's been living in Fort Worth for most of her life, and she didn't even know she'd been kidnapped. Does that give you chills? The family this weekend, look at this, meeting at a local church, hugs, tears, all of it. Valerie Castro is here to report on this for us tonight. It's such a shocking story. It's such an emotional story. 51 years after being kidnapped, being reunited with her birth family, as she now has a family of her own. Talk us through it.
Well, Hallie, this is a family that truly never gave up hope. And every year on Melissa's birthday, they would get together and they would celebrate. They would sing her happy birthday. They would have balloons, and they would try to keep the story alive, raise awareness that Melissa was still missing after all of those years. And just days after the most recent vigil, her birthday would have been earlier this month. Again, they celebrated. Just a few days after that, they got word that Melissa may be alive and that she may have been found. Melissa has 4 siblings. Some of them were born after she went missing, so of course she never met them. And her siblings say that she was always that missing piece, especially around the holidays. They always felt that that presence wasn't there. But now they say this year, especially with Christmas right around the corner, their family finally feels complete. Take a listen to what some of her siblings had to say.
It's just amazing meeting her. When I met her for the first time, it was like looking into myself. She looks like me. She looks like us.
For the first time in 51 years, our family is whole and complete.
And her brother Jeff also credited the Center for Missing and Exploited Children in raising awareness about Melissa's story and really helping them eventually find her and help solve this case. Hallie?
What about the investigation itself that had been happening, I presume, when Melissa now Melanie, first went missing?
Well, so this still remains an unsolved case, and Melissa told WFAA-TV, the ABC affiliate in the Dallas area, that she really had an unhappy childhood. She ran away from an abusive home when she was 15, and she became estranged from the woman who she thought was her mother at that time. The Fort Worth Police Department says it will continue an investigation now, and they say they're actually going to do their own DNA test to ensure that this is, in fact, Melissa. They also issued a statement saying, in part, even though the criminal statute of limitations expired 20 years after Melissa's 18th birthday, they are committed to completing this investigation to help uncover all of the available information concerning the abduction. So it seems, Hallie, that even if a suspect is eventually identified, it's unlikely that anyone would be charged at this point. Hallie?
Still, the search for answers at least, continues. Valerie Castro, thank you very much. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Australian Environmental Minister says she's going to lobby against UNESCO adding the Great Barrier Reef to a list of endangered World Heritage Sites. A new UN-backed report warned that this coral reef was in danger unless there was ambitious, rapid, and sustained climate action that happens. The Australian officials say the report was a reflection on Australia's previous Conservative government, which got voted out earlier this year, and that the country's new government has already addressed some of the concerns in the report. This reef beef persists. Number 2, Twitter saying it's no longer going to prioritize removing or tagging misleading health information related to COVID. The company's new CEO, Elon Musk, as you know, has committed to free speech on Twitter, which may be part of the reason why the change has happened. Number 3, new research suggests a common treatment for arthritis might actually be linked to faster progression of arthritis, not what you want to see. Now, we got to caution you, these are just from 2 smaller unpublished studies, but they did find that on average, people who got corticosteroid injections saw their knee arthritis advance more quickly than people who didn't get the shots. Earlier research on this has had mixed results. Number 4, Hallie Bieber, now revealing she has an ovarian cyst the size of an apple. Sharing this photo on her Instagram stories, saying she doesn't have endometriosis or PCOS and shooting down pregnancy rumors again. She's been open about her health issues before. Earlier this year, she opened up about a small blood clot in her brain. Number 5, I want you to take a live look here at the Capitol tree lighting ceremony here in D.C. This is just literally like 4 blocks away from where we are. The tree's not lit quite yet, but the festivities are going down. This year's tree is from North Carolina this year and is 78 feet tall. Of course, the Rock Center tree gets lit tomorrow night. When we come back, police patrolling some big cities in China, trying to stop even more protests by people furious about the country's zero COVID rules. What officials are trying to do on this new crackdown, coming up right after the break. Officials in China cracking down now to try to prevent more protests against the company's strict zero COVID policy. Chinese universities are sending students home and letting them take classes online. And listen, the streets there in many cities look a lot different than they did just a day or 2 ago. You've got police, look at this, out patrolling the streets, not demonstrators. They're walling off and guarding areas that had seen huge crowd of protesters over the weekend. What ended up being some of the biggest shows of civil disobedience in decades in China. Extraordinary and rare. According to some reports, security officers have actually been looking at people's phones, searching for pictures or messages that could link them to the protests. China's Legal and Political Affairs Commission saying in a statement today that the strong measures were needed to, in their words, maintain national security and social stability in the middle of these protests. In the meantime, you've got health officials trying to speed up vaccination pushes, especially among older people. Raf Sanchez is joining us now. Raf, the big question had been, what is Xi Jinping going to do after these really dramatic demonstrations that we haven't seen in China in decades here? We sort of now have the answer to that, right? He is looking to use, you talked about carrots and sticks, he is looking to use some sticks here.
He's looking to use some sticks. He's flooding the zone. There are thousands and thousands of police officers across cities throughout China, and they are there to stop a repeat of the protests that we've seen over the last 5 days or so. It looks like they've been successful. It looks like they have basically taken up that space. It's worth remembering, Hallie, it's the middle of the week now in China. We'll see what happens this weekend. Might people be back on the streets again? I spoke to a Chinese friend today. She said something interesting, that it's likely that these immediate protests will dwindle over the next couple of days. But she thinks that the dam has been breached here, that this was such an enormous moment, the idea that people stood in the middle of Shanghai and called for the downfall of the Chinese Communist Party, called for the downfall of Xi Jinping, that the next time there are grievances, people will remember this. You know, those chants will echo in people's minds long after the protesters themselves have left the street. It does look, for the moment, though, like Xi has succeeded in getting the streets back. We'll see what happens in the days to come, Hallie.
But there's also, you know, this idea that there is a public health intervention happening. I don't want to say intervention, but maybe an accelerated push on the vaccination front. There's not a super high vaccination rate in China, and it sounds like there is some movement on that front now.
Yeah, so some movement today. The National Health Commission, their equivalent of the Health and Human Services Department, saying they are going to step up the vaccination of older people. Vaccination rates in China in general not that high, not high among the elderly, who are, of course, the population that you most need vaccinated. And so this looks like the Chinese government trying to get themselves out of this corner where they don't really have any good options. They can't really release these COVID lockdowns, because if they do, COVID is going to rip through a population that is not as vaccinated as it needs to be. So this looks like they are trying to find a way to slowly, probably, if it all depends on getting people vaccinated, but ease these lockdowns in a way that doesn't lead to a huge surge in COVID, in a way that doesn't undermine what has been the core message that Xi Jinping has been telling the Chinese people for the last 3 years, which is, we are keeping you safe. These restrictions may be arduous, they may be grinding, but look what's happening in the United States, where hundreds of thousands of people are dying. That has been his key message. It is being sorely, sorely tested now, Hallie.
Raf Sanchez, thank you so much for staying on top of this story. It's an important one. We're going to keep covering it. Coming up here on the show, we're also covering, as we talk about public health, a new study that says the U.S. gun violence epidemic is deadlier than ever. And there are huge disparities in who's actually dying. We'll talk more about who's most at risk and what can be done. Plus, something like 200 people in Minnesota had to get rescued because they got trapped when an ice chunk, look at this, broke off on a lake. More of those pictures and more on what happened coming up in the local. Stay with us. Let's talk about some brand new data in a study about the number of people dying from gun violence in this country. And let me start with what might not surprise you. It is at a nearly 3-decade high. Okay, but here's what actually might cause you to stop for a second. Look at however you're streaming this. Huge disparities among who is affected here. This is a study published in JAMA Network Open, finding men are way more at risk, especially young Black and Hispanic men. Among Black men ages 20 to 24, the gun-related homicide rate was more than 22 times higher than white men. Our team talked with a couple of doctors behind the study who say in the context of medicine and healthcare, this is like unprecedented. This number is virtually unparalleled. Watch.
When we think about significant disparities in healthcare, anything that is a 50% increase, a twofold increase, that's big. When we look at Black infants dying in the United States versus white infants, they died a little more than twofold times higher. That's a big number. When it comes to the firearm fatalities, we're talking 22-fold times higher.
Looking at the data more broadly, more than 1 million people in this country have been killed by guns over the past 30 years. That trend's been going up for years, pretty steadily. The researchers who worked on this study say it is a public health emergency. It is a public health emergency. Something's got to get done. Dr. Akshay Syal joins me now. And what I want people to realize, we have a doctor on this show to talk about gun violence here, because that's what this has come to in this country, right? That gun violence is a public health epidemic, Dr. Syal.
Yeah, no, the gun violence being a public health crisis is something that actually the American Medical Association has been saying for the last 5 or 6 years now. It's definitely something that's affecting all of us and something doctors are seeing first line. I want to point out with this study, one of the things that was really surprising to me, actually, since the COVID pandemic hit, since 2019, 2020, 2021, we saw some of the largest increases in firearm fatalities throughout the course of that study, about 25%. So when you consider everything that went on during COVID, this is just another thing here that just adding on another layer to the deaths of despair.
There's a mental health aspect to all of this too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't know is because it doesn't get as much coverage is, most gun fatalities in this country are actually suicides and accidents, and, coming after homicides. So, there definitely is a mental health component, and depending on which age group you pop into, there's different causes for the more likely reasons that you suffer an injury from a firearm.
What about the disparities that we've laid out here? We know that the AMA, as you talk about, has called this a public health emergency for a while now. But these numbers, right, these sort of shocking numbers on who is actually dying, how does the medical community think about that?
Yeah, so, it depends on which age group you're in, and we talked to some of the authors about what are the real disparities here and what are you more likely to die from depending on your age. Take a listen to what they had to say.
An overwhelming number of elderly, white, non-Hispanic males are dying by firearm-related suicides. In contrast, we see that young adolescents and young adult Black and African-American males are dying by firearm-related homicides.
And, to your point, Hallie, the reason that we need this to be a public health emergency is because there's no one-size-fits-all here that will, solve the epidemic of gun violence. It really is a very nuanced issue that, as you just heard, depending on where you fall into the spectrum, there may be a different solution for you.
Dr. Akshay Syal, thank you so much for bringing this to us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Anytime.
NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Southeast Bureau, Houston is now letting people drink water out of their taps. No more boil water advisory starting today. It had affected something like 2 million people there. We told you about it yesterday on the show. Schools in the city closed yesterday. They were closed again today, but will be back tomorrow. The whole deal came about when a power outage at a purification plant caused pressure to drop. Officials were worried about contamination, so they had people do a lot of what you're seeing right now, get it steaming hot. From our Midwest Bureau, officials in northern Minnesota rescued something like 200 people this week. Look at this. They all apparently got trapped when they were fishing on a lake, standing on an ice chunk that broke off and floated away 30 yards offshore, basically. Officials managed to use a temporary bridge to get them off the lake and then obviously reminded people, be really careful if you're going on the ice early in the season. From our Northeast Bureau, a pet shelter in New Jersey says this 5-year-old cat, Fish-to-Fur, was sad and depressed, but this reported couch potato's luck changed this week when somebody tweeted its pet finder profile and it went viral. Everybody loved Fish-to-Fur, so hundreds of people reached out to adopt him, the shelter says. A couple from Maryland said they drove 2 hours to meet little sad Fish-to-Fur. They ended up taking him home, where they're going to look to turn his crown upside down. To tonight's original now, with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And listen, sometimes we all just need a meal to be fast and convenient, right? Especially when you don't have time to cook. So if you're at the grocery store, you're looking at the aisles, maybe you'll pick out something that you can make real quick, like in minutes, maybe just 3.5 minutes. But a Florida woman is now saying the Kraft Heinz company misled people by claiming their microwavable Velveeta shells and cheese is, quote, ready in 3.5 minutes. She says that's actually not the case at all. It's raising bigger, broader questions about food marketing in this country, consumers and companies. Here's Zingle Esamoah.
This microwavable pasta is at the center of a new lawsuit. Amanda Ramirez from Florida is suing food giant Kraft Heinz, alleging the company misleads customers about just how long it takes to prepare Velveeta's shells and cheese cups. Velveeta shells and cheese packaging says ready in 3.5 minutes, but Ramirez says the claim is false, since microwaving for 3.5 minutes is one of several steps needed. The suit alleges the company is misleading customers, allowing the company to sell more of the product at a higher price. In a statement, representatives for the plaintiffs said in part, "I've gotten a lot of flack about this case, but deceptive advertising is deceptive advertising, and we want corporate America to be straightforward and truthful." In a statement, Kraft Heinz tells NBC they're aware of the, quote, frivolous lawsuit and will strongly defend against the allegations in the complaint.
At first glance, this lawsuit may look ridiculous, but when you look at it more closely, it may be that the defendant here made a misstatement of fact about how long it takes to prepare this product.
One of the attorneys on this suit is Spencer Sheehan, nicknamed the Vanilla Lawyer. He's filed over 400 class action lawsuits against food and beverage companies, over 100 just on vanilla flavoring. This includes household favorites like strawberry Pop-Tarts, Betty Crocker fudge brownie mix, A&W root beer, and even Tostitos hints of lime. The cases are either pending, dismissed, or settled out of court.
This is just a prime example of what we call lawsuit abuse.
Sherman Joyce is president of the American Tort Reform Association.
The evidence is very clear that in these types of consumer class actions that the consumer gets little, if anything, but that the lawyers do quite well.
Other experts say the law looks out for consumers.
State statutes that punish deceptive trade practices are David and Goliath type statutes. They're designed to look out for the little guy who is harmed by these fraudulent or deceptive trade practices by gigantic companies.
As for Velveeta's mac and cheese, time will tell.
Oh, time will tell. You didn't go there, Zingle. You sure did. What's so interesting to me, this is such a talker of a story because, on the one hand, and Danny Savalos, I think, our legal analyst, sort of said it well, to some people it might sound frivolous, but to others it's like, hey, companies should tell the truth, right? Even if it's something like a $10 box of mac or whatever it is, I don't know the cost, that's the whole basis of this, right? And I know that one of the attorneys involved had told another outlet, even if it's just a few cents, a few dollars, that stuff matters. Shouldn't that stuff matter?
Yeah, Hallie, at the end of the day, it comes down to language. Danny, the legal analyst that we spoke with, said there's a legal term. It's called puffery, and it's a very thin line between actually trying to mislead customers and simply hyping oneself up. So we're going to have to wait for the courts on this one, but it's definitely something that's leaving us a little hungry, if nothing else.
Well, for sure. Like there's also this thing of like, yeah, buyer beware. You should know, like, if you don't want to spend 6 minutes on your mac and cheese, you should know it. But if your mac and cheese says 3.5, like, at what point do people, like, at what point does the onus come off the consumer and onto the company?
Yeah, I mean, as for that, that's kind of what they're going to be sparring about in the court.
Yeah.
We don't really know. And I'm more of a stovetop mac and cheese person, Hallie. But I know for the microwave folks among us,
how
it's
luxurious for you.
Yeah.
All the extra time that you have to be able to do that. Cinque Esima, thank you so much. That's it for us this hour. Always good to be with you. More tomorrow, same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.